today with everybody here about co-working. And this kind of just stemmed from an article that we had posted on the website. And our guest today reached out and was like, hey, did you guys do this? And it was kind of funny because it was a blast from the past where we first met, I'm trying to think, like 6 years ago, and maybe our guest can correct me in a moment, working back in the restaurant business, which I'll be asking because I learned a lot in that circumstance or that situation and a lot of skills that I've been able to bring forward today. But without further ado, let's introduce the guest. It's Tamsen. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. How is the non-restaurant life now? And tell us what it is that you do.
It's great. I'm now the community coordinator at Focal Point Coworking.
Mm-hmm.
So we are a co-working space on the edge of the South Slope at 125 South Lexington, Suite 101, but we're actually at the corner of Hilliard and Church.
Okay.
So yeah, it's great to be out of the crazy hours of the restaurant world and the intense life that's there.
A little bit of chaos.
Sometimes I miss it. I see people walking down the street and say, hey, you're Tony. You like to sit at table 21. And you can never forget those things.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's definitely a couple of people that were regulars that I probably will remember their drink orders and food orders for the rest of my life.
Yeah. But hey, it means you're good at what you did, right?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people I learned so much in like working as far as just like learning how to talk to different people, managing expectations, frustrations, and selling. You know, we did a lot of selling with the bottles of wines and whatnot, so it was a really good experience for me. Do you feel like you've had a lot of things that you've been able to take from the restaurant business to what you do now, or I don't know what
absolutely.
You did in between?
Yeah, well, because I started out as a host, and I always enjoyed the big picture and small picture combo that hosting was, because you're looking at these little details of who's on what course and are they finishing up, but then you're also looking at the restaurant as a whole and what the kitchen is doing. So I think it helps me look at all these little details, but the whole picture at the same time. So sometimes you have to let go of a small detail to make the big picture run smoothly. So that was helpful. Yeah, and we met back it was 2011.
Was it really?
Yes, when the restaurant opened, right?
Was that 2011?
Yes.
Yeah, I was. I was there pre-opening.
Right.
Was that really 2011?
Yeah.
Wow. So that was that 8 years ago? 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. Wow. I remember.
It was, and I stayed there for 7 years. I was with that company, but I went back to school during the time I was there and shifted into a communications role doing social media and other kinds of PR work for the restaurant group. And then I kind of just
transitioned.
Yes.
So how did you get plugged in with Focal?
Focal Point, I kind of...
It's a Focal Point, sorry.
That's okay.
Focal Point.
Focal Point. Well, I was looking for a new position and saw the ad on LinkedIn. It was just kind of let me check this out. I had heard a little bit about co-working, but not too much. And then met with Allison, and she was great. And I liked that I get to do a bunch of different things, combining hospitality with writing the blogs and doing their social media, and also just meeting a lot of different people and getting them to join our community.
Has there been anything that's really surprised you since you started working there that you didn't expect, or something that you were expecting that's not happening?
I think just seeing the range of things that people are doing. I kind of expected it to be a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurs, but we're seeing a lot more remote workers and even people who are just coming through Asheville and visiting. Sometimes they are staying in their RV or their van and they work remotely and they need a workspace for a week. So
are these people who work for like traditional like multinational or big national companies who have a remote job and they're just here for X amount of time and don't want to work in a coffee house or work at their house?
Exactly. Yeah, we had a woman who worked for Facebook. Sometimes they're really large companies like that. Often they are different nonprofits, the ACLU, American Cancer Society, that are just coming through, or even on a retreat in town or on vacation, and they need to
Just
take care of some work.
yeah.
Yeah. But we do see those entrepreneurs and small business owners, but I thought it would be
Mostly
more.
that.
Yeah.
And so it's not been. Are they in the
No.
minority, or is it kind of an even mix?
I would say it's 60-40. There's
Okay.
definitely, it's more on the remote work side, but we do
Interesting.
have a lot of, we do have the people with their own business.
And of all these people that you have there on a given month, how many of them are like actually living here in Asheville, local,
Most of
versus
them.
people who are coming by? So you'd say
It's about 95% people
Are-
who live here.
And so I guess most of these, what I'm trying to figure out is, what's your opinion? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, like, it's just so hard to find good work here and things like that. So you're in an environment, obviously, where people are not having that conversation. They have, maybe that's a not fair assumption, but I'm assuming if people are in a co-working space, they're either working on their own business or working for somebody else.
Yep.
But either way, it's not supervised work. So you must feel, to a certain extent, pretty excited about what they're doing.
Yeah, and many of them bring their own jobs. So they're moving to Asheville. We had a member who just built a house in West Asheville, but brought the job that he was working in Austin and came here with that job. So a lot of it is folks coming from, sometimes larger. We have San Francisco, New York City, people who have moved from those areas and just get to do their job remotely with the same company they were working for. So they're not worried about the job market as much because they're bringing that job with them, and also they're bringing their money to Asheville and being able to kind of stimulate our economy, which is interesting to see.
Have the people who are not coming from out of places, like people who are not like bring your own job people, they're have jobs here, they're just remote, has there been like a really good benefit to having these out of town folk come in with, like, I don't know, new ideas, new money? And have you guys seen collaboration happen? Because you're like, oh, like, I'm in Asheville, I've lived here my whole life doing my thing, and then somebody comes from, San Francisco working at a big multinational or whatever, and then they're going to have a total different perspective on how to run a business or what's possible when it comes to scaling and things like that. So
yeah, it's great to see the collaboration and the kind of bouncing ideas off of people. We've had some people who are just getting started who kind of, outwardly say like, oh, I don't know what's up with this WordPress. Or, and someone else will say, hey, you should try this. So there's definitely people using each other as a resource, but it's not necessarily people from here needing the people from somewhere else. It's vice versa. It's the people who are coming from somewhere else going, hey, what's the best networking event here in Asheville?
Right.
And the people who are already kind of established can say, hey, I recommend you check out this one.
what is the best networking event? It's a good question, actually.
Well, we love our networking events because we hold what's called Biz and Bites once a month, which are business development workshops. So on a lot of different topics. We've done everything from mindfulness to bookkeeping, tapping into who's in Asheville, who wants to lead a workshop, and what's going to be a great benefit to our members. So like tomorrow we have Lisa Zahia coming in. She's an amazing business coach doing a workshop. So we love those events.
What's that workshop on?
It's called Make It Happen, the tactics to get ahead in life and business in life. So I know a couple people who've worked with her as a business coach, and she's like really a go-getter, and she owns Studio Zahia downtown as a dancer, and I saw her speak at the yoga festival. She's a really powerful and just a driven person, so we're excited.
That's exciting. Yeah. I did not realize you guys had Biz and Bites.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes,
I'll have to swing by and check that out.
Third Thursday
of every month. Okay.
Depending on the schedule of our workshop leaders. So those are great.
So if is that open to anybody, I guess I should clarify?
Yeah, they're open to the public.
Okay.
It's $10 for the public. It's free to members, so it's a benefit to the members, and lunch is included. So yeah, we love that, and you get to kind of meet our community and see what's going on at
Absolutely.
Focal. Yeah.
What's been your personal favorite networking event that you guys have put on? I don't know if you're allowed to say that because
no, I know
ranking things, but
well, One of my favorites was Barry Barton. She did one on public speaking,
Okay.
Which is one of my favorite topics. So learning some new tips. I'm not always in the workshop per se because I've kind of got to watch the front door and see what, but from what I gathered of her workshop, that one was great. And I also really enjoyed, we had Linda and Larry Camarada do the mindfulness and meditation, which is another really cool tool that you don't always think is going to benefit you in the workplace, but it really can. So that was a cool one.
Absolutely. So this podcast is called Asheville Real Estate News.
Yes.
And sometimes we have topics like today where we're kind of loosely related to real estate. Other times we do deep dive into like specific numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know how long you've been at Focal Coworking? Focal Point?
Focal Point?
Yes.
I've been there about a year and a month or so. Yeah.
And when you all first moved there, when you first got involved, have you noticed that there's been any change around, like, go back to our restaurant days? I remember parking where the AC Hotel is now and being like, man, I hope my car doesn't get broken into. Actually, I was on a moped back in the day. I was like, I hope my moped is here when I come back. And obviously, like, hey, you can't park there now, and the concerns really wouldn't be in place anymore. But have you guys noticed ripple effects of having like just like a thriving, bustling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember walking through that neighborhood, and not seeing anything in the South Slope.
Yeah.
Having all those boarded up buildings on Banks Ave, and now I can send people to Vortex.
Yeah.
People will say, what do? I get to town at 7 a.m., but you guys don't open till 8:30. We'll go hang out at Vortex for a little bit. And having these great places on both sides is really cool because you can go to the South Slope and have things. So we're definitely noticing that more and more people are enjoying that side of town, which makes me happy to see downtown areas get revitalized and used, which is something that co-working does all over the world. They revitalize different empty spaces that may not be useful. Sometimes they set up in empty malls, things like that. So co-working has been a really interesting concept.
So I don't know what episode it was. I'm going to look over here on Nolan, but when we did the one with Bill Gocher, that must have been like one of our first 20 episodes or something. And he was really responsible for a lot of the changes that happened in the River Arts District because he was going into these warehouses and chopping them into small little like studios. And do you know what was in the building before Focal Point went in?
Yeah, there was.
Struggling with the name for some reason.
Okay. There was Handmade in America, which is, I believe, like an arts type of organization. So they kind of had the whole space as offices and things like that. And it's been interesting because we do rent meeting space out to outside groups.
You do?
Yes. We have three meeting rooms, including a large conference room. And then we have our event space that we can close off, so we rent that out as well.
Very cool.
So a couple of the groups were here when Handmade in America was going on. We had one nonprofit that rented conference room space, and they're just feel at home because they remember being here before, and they remember our awesome patio, and they're like, hey, we're in this space again. So it's great to see that carry through.
No, absolutely. So going back to the job thing.
Yeah.
What is it that most people do? Is there an easy answer to that, or is it like?
No, it's really varied. Because we have folks that we have writers, we have a couple of nonprofit foundations. One of them is a national nonprofit, and they have 5 spaces. They have a team kind of working together. We have people working on their projects as a hobby.
What are the ranges of like the size of the people who are there? Is it usually like a one person? I mean, I know you mentioned this national nonprofit that's a little bit bigger, but is that the norm, or is it usually like
it's usually
one person?
Just a single person on the membership level. And then in our private offices, we have teams of we have a couple teams of about 5 or 6, but then usually it's just single person.
So you mentioned the membership levels, right? So what is that? Break that down for us.
Excuse me. Yeah. So we have a membership-based space where If you want to start at $25 a month, that's our community level membership. And that gives you 4 days of co-working a month. So you could come in once a week.
Is that 4
get out of your
days,
home
like
office.
40 hours a month then? Like 4 10-hour days or 4 whatever, 8 hour?
8:30 to 5:30. So if you want to come in right at 8:30 and stay till 5:30, you can.
So it's not on a per hour basis. It's like,
No.
So if I come in for an hour that day, that's my day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so you can come in 4 days.
4 days.
You can come to our events for free, and there's other little perks built in. You can do marketing consultation, bookkeeping with some of our existing members who are sharing their knowledge and benefits to the other members. Then there is the hot desk membership, which is a great deal at $150 a month, $149 a month. You can come in every day, Monday through Friday.
And that's the hot desk?
Yes.
Okay.
And work at any available workstation. Then it goes to the dedicated desks, and those are $3.99 a month. Those are all taken, which is awesome. But those are so you can set up, have your specific workstation, and be there working.
So you can have like a desktop there. You don't have to.
Yeah, you can put your kid's picture up and your computer, your desktop.
And are those private spaces?
No, the dedicated desks are kind of out in the open, and then we have the semi-private office, which it's been a while since we rented them. I believe they're $5.99 for it's kind of a cubicle
Subject to
style.
change, whatever the price is.
Well, I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are more private with a closing door, and you can put
Right.
extra stuff in there. And then we have the more traditional private offices, which range from $6.95 up.
Just depending on size and
depending
stuff.
on size, windows, that sort of thing. But what's really great is that all these amenities are included.
So what's your favorite amenity that you guys offer? From an offering standpoint, not from a consumer. You're like, I'm so happy we give this to people.
I'm so happy we have our patio.
Yeah.
It's really my favorite.
Good outside space.
I love going out there during my lunch break and reading a book. There's trees. There's a squirrel. We saw
Just
a
one?
turkey there one time.
Turkey?
It's
Wow.
just one little squirrel that visits. Yeah, so even though you're in downtown, you have this little kind of nature area to relax and get some oxygen. So that's my favorite amenity.
What do you think other people would say is their favorite amenity to receive?
I mean, it really depends on who's doing what thing. We have a couple folks who love printing things, and we have an engineer who prints out blueprints and then scans and sends them, So having that business class printer and scanner, you don't have to worry about changing the toner. You don't have to think about that kind of thing. So it really depends on the person. Some people love the meeting room that's available so they can meet with clients all the time and do interviews or
whatever the case might be.
Yeah. So
curious to know about your conference room. Do you guys rent those out to people who are non-members, and like what
Yes.
size they are? So if I'm thinking of doing like a conference, or somebody who's listening what is that, and who do they reach out to?
Yeah. Well, we have a small meeting room that's up to about 4 people.
Okay.
So that's a good little space. And then we have a semi-private conference room, so it doesn't have a closed-in ceiling. And that one is up to about 8 people. And then our large conference room that has a closing door is 10, maybe 12 people if you really fill it up. And that one's, they all have, big screen TVs, whiteboards, HDMI, all that sort of thing. So you can
do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and then our event space, which is
that was the main question I had.
Up to about 20. Well, we've done 30 people in there. We've done standing events for more people, but I'd say seated and
comfortably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is cool. We've seen outside pharmaceutical groups and
really? Very
local
cool.
restaurants. Chai Pani did a couple staff trainings there. So that's a really cool space.
Feels like there's a lot of co-working spaces in Asheville. And by a lot, I mean, I don't know, 4, 3, something like that.
Yeah.
Is that like, feels like it's pretty new, right? Last 3-4 years or so?
Yeah.
Is it sustainable? Like, I know we ran this article on the website, and I was just talking about, like, how it wouldn't have been sustainable, like, even 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
And curious to know, in your opinion, why it's sustainable now and why it can support 4 different spaces or 5 or whatever the number is. But
well, it's pretty nice to see, too, each space gets their own kind of niche.
what's your all's niche?
Ours seems to be remote workers.
Okay.
We're really kind of getting those folks in,
Perfect,
which
yeah.
is great. Some of them are more tech focused and startups, things like that with resources.
Right.
And we've seemed to have gotten the remote workers in our corner, which is really cool. And I think that as technology kind of evolves and everyone starts working independently and can work from anywhere, we do start to see we need human connection. We get isolated in our home office. We need these little communities. And I think that as that continues, people are going to continue to seek out places like this where they can meet new people in their area, meet professionals and people like them.
Right.
We've seen friendships emerge from people who are either new here or just lonely from sitting in their home office. And then they start to see this real benefit in having coworkers, even if they're not working on the same project, to bounce ideas off of. So I think that's definitely sustainable. Human connection is always a sustainable thing.
What about like from a numbers perspective, right? Like, so I was curious, right? Like we've all been like this great upswing of economy and things like that. Is this something that is going to be like improve if things kind of tank a little bit because people are like going to like, oh, I don't need an office, I just need a desk, this is a good fit? Or is it going to be more challenging?
Well,
because I think there are some industries that are going to flourish and other ones that aren't, and I have no idea if you've ever thought about it, if you can speak on it. I know it's a little bit of a question out of left field, but
no, it's interesting to think about. And Allison, the owner or the founder, and I were talking to a group today, and she was saying how our space allows people to expand but also to contract. So if they need to scale down, we can do that. And if they need to scale up, you know what I mean? We're always kind of flexible. And I think that we're always looking at the economy and the rates of things and trying to work with people where they're at and formulate some sort of what works for you. Do you need a package that's only meeting room space? Or so I think that staying flexible and seeing what's going on is really going to be helpful.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that ability to go up and down, at least whether you use that flexibility or not, sometimes just knowing you have flexibility is like generates a lot of peace, right?
Right. And it's not like you're locked into these super long-term, lease.
Is it all month to month mostly?
Mostly.
Unless you're in probably some of the office spaces.
Up to a year-long lease, but then after that they can kind of reevaluate and so. And
what do you think people don't know about co-working that they should know?
I was just thinking about this. I was writing a blog about the myths of co-working. I think that they think they're going to be distracted and playing, and people think about like Google offices and ping pong tables and.
Do you guys don't have a ping pong table?
Beanbag chairs. No. That people think it's going to be distracting, but it's actually been shown to boost productivity and happiness and morale in people, even without ping pong. So I think people are like, oh, it's just going to be like working in a coffee shop, but it's really a different feel than that. It's definitely a professional environment for them.
And are there any misconceptions around there where people think it's definitely like, I mean, I know the distracting thing, so maybe that is it, but are there anything else when you talk to people who are like, don't have experience, they come tour your facility, and they're like, oh, I think this, and you're like, oh, actually, no, not at all.
Well, I think also some of the things that I thought of, like it's all going to be tech startups.
Right.
Whereas we do have a couple folks who work on apps and things like that, but it's not the majority. It's not the
bulk, right? Okay.
And if it were, that's cool too.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not that.
I think it makes sense. I think personally, that's what I would think. It's like, oh, probably all like tech people, but if they're not, then the dynamic's a little different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, any closing thoughts about anything? The value of working in restaurants? I don't know. Why communication? Did you enjoy that? I'm just, whatever closing remarks you want to make about any of those things.
Boy.
And like, do you enjoy doing media? Because I guess that's primarily what you do to a large degree. I mean, if you're doing all the blogs, social media, you're here talking to us today.
I do like doing media. I just like doing so many things. And I think that's why I like it so much, is that I get to learn about everyone's different careers. And to me, that diversity of what's going on and being engaged in the community and helping everyone kind of collaborate and thrive is really exciting to see. And I think it's really good for Asheville. So,
No, awesome.
Come in and check out Focal Point if you need a private office space or even a spot to sit for a day.
Or Biz and Bites, right?
Yes,
I'm
come to
curious
Biz and
about that.
Bites.
I'll definitely come.
Definitely. You
start
want to
this
lead
tomorrow?
one? Yeah.
Sure.
Tomorrow at noon.
Send an invite. I
Okay.
don't know what I'd lead it on, but we could
don't
talk
know.
about it. I'd enjoy it. I was terrified
Cool.
talking in front of people, but sometimes, I definitely enjoy it more
good to
often than not.
practice.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for coming.
Sure.
See you at Biz and Bites or at
Yes.
Focal Coworking.
Focal Point. Yes.
Coworking soon. Either way.
Sounds good.
What's the best way for people to do their own research on your website, Facebook page, Instagram, or where do
We
do
do
people go?
all those things. FocalPointCowork.com is our website. You can always just stop by and I'll give you a tour and chat about what works for you.
And your hours are 8:30 to 5?
8:30 to 5:30,
Okay.
Monday through Friday. And
I have a question. Just
Yeah,
thought of it.
totally.
So people don't have access in over the weekends?
people who
people
have
work with
private
their
offices have 24/7 access. The dedicated desk folks have 24/7 access. There's definitely some wiggle room with
just depending, but in
if
general,
you're on a call and it's going until 6,
we'll work with you.
Work with that.
Awesome.
So,
Cool.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, Tamsen, thanks so much for
Thank
coming by.
you.
It's great chatting, seeing you
Definitely
after
good to see you.
2011. I
I
still can't
know.
believe that. That's crazy.
You were like a kid back then.
Yeah,
We
it
were
was.
both
Yeah,
kids.
absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for checking out another episode. Real quick, as a reminder, at the end of this month, October, looking at everybody who's tuning in, don't forget we have a really good event coming up with Jim Hitt of American IRA, who also supports this podcast. We're going to be talking about creative financing, house hacking, and how to leverage your IRA. I've said this, I think, in last month's newsletter, but one of the first real estate conferences I went to was listening to Jim talk about creative financing and the creativity that real estate affords us. It's still things that I've taken to heart today. So hope to see you guys there. First 10 people get a free beer. So good incentive to show up early and bring your questions. And don't worry, we will still be doing a lot of good intentional networking as well. All right, y'all. See you next Tuesday. Take care.